So what fingers should you use to pick the strings? This is an important question whether you're just starting to play or if you're a more experienced fingerstyle guitar player. Because if you're just starting out, it can be really confusing. A lot of notation, a lot of instruction doesn't really tell you what fingers to use. And this can make it harder to start learning what you're doing. And if you're a more experienced player, this can still be one of the hidden stumbling blocks. If you're struggling to get your thumb and fingers to behave the way you want them to on a reliable basis, sometimes that can be because you don't have a good set of defaults, a good plan for what finger is going to play what string. Just a little bit of confusion is enough to cost you, fragments of a second as you're going to play this note or that note. And that's all it takes to throw your groove off, right? When you're trying to establish a groove and play in time, every moment counts. So by having a set of defaults to rely on for what fingers to play which strings, you can start to tighten up your playing almost immediately. And as you go through these defaults, you may find that there are times when your hands want to do something different, and that's cool. You just need to have a starting point. Everybody's hands are different. Everybody's trying to play their own music. So this is a place to start from. And from there, you can go and make your own choices based on what feels best and works best for you. Now, if you are a fingerstyle guitar player looking for an ongoing, more organized way to learn new tunes, turn those tunes into complete songs, and start to improvise on them, I encourage you to check out my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, at the link below or the link on screen. So when I was first learning to play, one of the few books I could find that actually talked about playing this kind of music was Ken Perlman's book, Fingerstyle Guitar. It's a great book, and I encourage you to go find it and check it out. It's still in print. But he had this very simple and clear set of defaults that he recommended. And that's really all I'm going to show you today. And I can't even take credit for it because I learned it out of Ken's book. But I've been using it for decades, and it's pretty great. So here's the idea. If you're playing fingerstyle, your thumb is going to be occupied playing the bass notes. And if you're playing in an alternating thumb style, that's probably going to be on some combination of the sixth, fifth, and fourth string. And if you're playing steady bass, like I just was now, it might just be the low string or the low string and the fifth string. But that means that your index finger, middle finger, and ring finger are going to be doing everything else. And it's just those three fingers, but it is those three fingers. I know that, a lot of classic musicians like Merle Travis and Doc Watson apparently only played with their thumb and their index finger. Who's the other one? Merle Travis, Doc Watson, Gary Davis. All three of those giants of fingerstyle apparently did it all like this, which is mind-boggling. But for most of the rest of us, it's going to be index, middle, and ring finger playing the top three strings. Pinky doesn't really come into the equation. Sorry, Pinky. That's just the way it is. If you're playing in that steady bass style where your thumb is playing steady bass notes on the low strings and not doing this alternating, then the fourth string really doesn't come into the picture for the thumb very much at all, which means we've got a bit of a math problem here, right? We've got three fingers and we've got four strings that we need to deal with. So let's talk about how we're going to start and how we're going to deal with the four strings instead of three. The basic default is going to be index finger on the third string, middle finger on the second string, and ring finger on the high string. So if we've got a chord like this, an E7 chord with the fifth and the flat seven and the third, and we want to grab the whole chord with the bass, then we're just going to have index finger, middle finger, and ring finger playing those top three strings, just grabbing everything at once like a little claw. And if we've got individual notes we want to play, then we can just roll up the strings with index, middle, and ring. And that means that if we have two notes in a row on the same string, then we're going to repeat that finger, right? So index, middle, ring, ring, middle, index, middle, ring. So, and so if we've got two notes then if it's on the third and second string, we're going to have index and middle playing at the same time. And if it's on the top two strings, then maybe it'll be middle and ring. Now you could reach over and play that with index and middle. But if you sort of stick to this default, using middle and ring for the top two strings, then when you come back and are playing something on the third string, then everything's kind of where it needs to be just at the right moment. So middle and ring, ring, middle, middle, index, middle, index, index, ring. Now, two exceptions to this rule. If you're going to go down onto the fourth string, what's going to happen? And what's going to happen is if you had a lick that instead of going to the high string landed down here, then index finger is going to come down one more string. So index is going to cover the third string and when necessary, the fourth string. Now, if you're going up, that is the one time when the whole thing is going to shift. So if you're coming down and you need to get that last note, then you've basically used these defaults and then use the index finger to also get the fourth string. But if you start out on the fourth string, well, then you might shift the whole operation down and play index on the fourth string, middle on the third string, and ring on the second string. And then you're going to do the opposite thing that you did with your index finger when you're coming down. In this case, coming down, index gets the third and the fourth string. Going up, ring finger, you've got now index on the fourth string, middle finger on the third string, ring finger on the second string, and then it's going to double up. The ring finger is going to double up and get both the second string and the high string. And that way you're sort of back into your default, right? So you go up, you're starting with everything one string down on the fourth, third, and second string, but then bringing the ring finger over to the high string gets you back to your default. So here's middle on the second string, and then ring finger on the high string, and you're back. One last thing is that, of course, it's blues. And so there are certain stylistic things that are not as neat and organized, like that brushing thing with index finger. Right? So there's a couple instances of that in what I just played. And so one way to think about that is if you're going to come up and then do that drag back, it sounds a little prim to do it ring, middle, index coming back down, right? Sounds like very proper, but you want to have that drag. So the index finger is going to take over at this point and do that drag backwards. And that is just a very specific kind of technique to get that sound. And what's going on is that the index finger, after you pick the high string the first time with the, can you see it? Ring finger, it's in there somewhere, right? Then you're gonna come back, index finger is gonna play the high string and then drag back along the second and the third string by resting on each string as you go, and doing that while you keep your thumb doing its thing. Which in this case happens in between bass notes. Which lets you kind of change your hand over. And it's one of those techniques that looks really simple and fluid, but takes a certain amount of slowing down and practicing, sort of deliberately doing that drag, which I know is hard to see on camera. But so you might practice just playing the bass and the drag, and then sort of get it up to speed. And there's a similar kind of thing that goes all the way down to the 4th string to get that kind of sound, which is dragging across all 4 strings and hammering on when you get to the 3rd string, and then hitting the bass at the end. So the hand's coming back and then rocking up, and then the thumb is snapping the bass. And that's a whole other thing. But that's the idea, having these default assignments. So again, you want to start out thinking index on the 3rd string, middle finger on the 2nd string, ring finger on the high string. If you're coming down, then as you get to the 4th string, index finger will go from the 3rd to the 4th string. If you're going up, you're going to start off with index on the 4th string, middle finger on the 3rd string, ring finger on the 2nd string. And then when you get to the high string, the ring finger is going to double up and grab the high string instead and put you back to your defaults of 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string being index, middle, and ring. So that's really the whole idea. And hopefully this idea of having some defaults for your picking hand will help you, whether you're just getting started and looking to fill in some of the gaps if the instruction you're looking at doesn't give you as much to go on as you'd like as far as what fingers to use to pick the strings, or if you're further along in your playing, but looking for ways to improve your picking hand coordination and tighten up your groove so that you can play the tunes you know with more confidence and conviction. I'll post on screen a couple of other lessons where I go into more detail on the channel about techniques like raking and triplets, and also just a more in-depth way to get into playing in the steady bass style in particular. So if you've got questions or comments about today's lesson, leave them down below. I would love to hear from you. And again, if you're looking for a more organized, ongoing way to learn tunes, turn those tunes into songs, and start improvising on them, I encourage you to check out my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, at the link below or the link on screen. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.